Let's move now to Bloemfontein in the Free State, where close friends and family of Katlego Bereng gathered today to say a proper goodbye to the man who died last year. Of course, it was Bereng's body that was found burnt beyond recognition in Thabo Bester's prison cell in May last year. His body was used as a decoy so that rapist and murderer Bester could fake his suicide and escape. DNA testing recently confirming Bereng's identity. Post-mortem report also confirming he was already dead before that fire in the cell broke out. Our senior reporter Slindelo Masikane attended that memorial service in Bloemfontein today. She joins us now to update us on that, but also quite a few significant developments around the court case, gathering together those who are accused of aiding and abetting this audacious escape from prison. So let's start with the charges, and the NPA announcing that there is no murder charge that any of the accused are facing. Is that a permanent thing, or is it simply a matter of, if it comes to light later that Bereng was in fact deliberately murdered for this purpose, they could be re-added?
It certainly could be re-added, but at this point what the NPA is saying is that they simply don't have sufficient evidence to be able to prosecute that particular charge at this point, and that is because there have been some new revelations in terms of the investigations. You would remember that from speaking to Katlego Bereng's family, when we did ask them, what has the police told you around what they know about the circumstances surrounding Bereng's death, they were told by police that Bereng had passed out, or he fell in town here in Bloemfontein. He bled out, was rushed to hospital, and then subsequently passed away at the hospital. And so if you look at those circumstances and what the police investigations have revealed so far, it does seem as though the NPA simply doesn't have enough to be able to take that particular charge forward. So they released a statement early this afternoon. Reports had begun to surface that it seemed the murder charge had been dropped, but in court yesterday, Sally, that had not been announced. And so a statement then being released by the NPA clarifying that yes, come next week when the bail applications are heard, Dr. Nandipa and her co-accused won't be facing a murder charge. Now, what that means is that those bail applications move from being Schedule 5 bail applications to Schedule 1, meaning the onus then is now on the state to show the court why the accused should remain behind bars. Now, we had an opportunity to unpack this development with the legal experts. This is what they had to say.
A few weeks ago, when I had occasion to speak to, I think, Braden, I cautioned against the overzealousness of the state and being seen to be cowering under public pressure, because I could foresee that there may be some charges that might have been over hastily added, which, in all fairness or based on objective facts, may be difficult for the state to prove. I have been vindicated. There was no basis in the first place for the state to have even considered charging all these accused with murder. Their own decision not to proceed with that charge has vindicated that position. Secondly, of course, it does have a bearing on the impending bail application. If, for example, they were facing murder and other less serious charges, I would have said the striking off or the non-proceeding with the murder charge would bring them a step closer to a possible successful bail application, because the onus now shifts back to the state, and there is no onus to be resting on them as applicants wanting to be admitted to bail. But it may well be that when one has objective regard to the other charges and the circumstances supporting those charges, it may still not be an easy walk in the park. So it does not automatically follow that they will be admitted to bail. I still think that they have a lot of explaining to do.
Yes, and they're back in court later this month, if I'm not mistaken. But let's now focus on the reason why you are in Bloemfontein today, and that is the memorial service for Katlego Bereng. That is the body that was burnt in Thabo Bester's cell, the decoy, so that he could fake his own suicide. I would imagine it must have been a very intense day, bearing in mind that this family had wanted to know where he was for months, had pretty much given hope. And then obviously would have followed this Thabo Bester story in the media, not realizing until the very last moment that in fact was their relative. Talk to me about the gathering.
So emotional, Sally. I can't even describe it. I think you would have had to be in the room to really feel the trauma that this family is going through, the friends, as well as some of those who were quite close in terms of the soccer fraternity that Katlego Bereng belonged to. You know, he was described as someone who was compassionate, who was kind. You know, he was a father of two, and in fact, he would have been turning 32 years old on the 18th of May this month. And so quite emotional scenes playing out, but you know, the family in particular saying that, you know, they want justice for Katlego. They want to know what happened to him. They believe that, of course, the police investigations perhaps just need to be given a little bit more time in order to uncover what exactly happened to him, you know, how his body ended up in Thabo Bester's cell. And of course, they are also looking to the NPA at some point to resume that particular charge, you know, in whatever form, in terms of holding those accountable. Also recalling just how painful it is to go to court and to see the accused and to still wonder exactly what happened to him. Let's take a listen to Bereng's aunts, you know, who just recount what a painful loss this is for the family.
You managed to do the impossible and show us that there is indeed life after death, for in your death your voice is louder. They keep fabricating your stories and your last memories. But like lightning, you struck and you left evidence that no one else can erase. O tla robala ka kgotso, knowing that those who betrayed you have been exposed. For now, keep visiting in my dreams, for it's in my dreams where I see you smiling, and that's how I choose to remember you. I choose to remember a happy soul, a forgiving soul, a naughty soul that brought joy into the room.
I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get into details about how Katlego died, because it opens our wounds. Because you can imagine, rona re le leloko, re bone masalla a Katlego. Re a bone ka mahlo. Count your blessings, because you haven't seen that. You can only imagine.
Yeah, there is a world of pain there, and particularly because they still don't have final answers on exactly how he died. There's one version, but it's not at all clear on what exactly happened. There's also today been another development around G4S, the private security company, British-owned company that built and ran that prison for over 20 years. We know that earlier this week, the Department of Correctional Services and the Minister made it very clear they are going to terminate that contract. Tell us a little bit more about the statement from G4S. The quick reading of it that I have sort of suggests to me that they're saying we're out of here and we're not going to counter-sue, because there was a lot of talk that G4S might sue because essentially the South African government was breaking that contract. Tell me more about what they said today.
So in essence, they were noting the submissions made by the Justice Minister to the Portfolio Committee, announcing that a notice of termination, a 90-day notice of termination, had been given to the contractor. Now, the contractor is the Bloemfontein Correctional Centre. The Bloemfontein Correctional Centre then subcontracted G4S to run the operations at the Mangaung Correctional Centre. So in essence, it's not necessarily G4S who received this notice of termination. It is the main contractor who then had the obligation to notify the subcontractor, which is G4S. So in essence, the statement just saying that they noted, and that in fact the private security company had back in 2019 already made a commitment, or should I say had made a resolution to begin disinvesting in correctional services in South Africa. And it seems as though they're going to accept whatever outcome that the main contractor decides in terms of litigation, and what they believe want to be a peaceful or a smooth transition of the prison's services back to DCS. So at this point, we don't know yet whether the main contractor, BCC, will be challenging the 90-day notice of termination. But in terms of G4S, there are no intentions of trying to challenge the termination, saying they want to comply and they want to assist in terms of making the transition of G4S out of the prison, and DCS, of course, once it takes over, G4S says it wants to make that particular transition a smooth one. We do know, of course, that since the news of the escape, DCS has already invoked a section of the Correctional Services Act where they are running the prison currently. So the question at the moment is that once that contract is terminated, or once it lapses, what happens to the staff that is currently inside the prison?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That's senior reporter Slindelo Masikane coming to us live from Bloemfontein.